Wow, what an intro that is from our friends on Lap, and that's bringing in a new edition of Beats and Beatdowns here. I am Bobby Munson, joined as always with Karl Karufel. Sorry, I'm stumbling over my it's because I'm so damn excited, Karl. We're on episode 2 of Beats and Beatdowns, talking about the influences of music in wrestling. We're going to be covering the letter B today. But before we do, I think we have a couple of shout outs we need to do for our sponsors. We're going to start off with our good old friend, Rich King at RK Athletics One. If you want to get in the best shape you've ever been in your life, from workout plans to eating plans, all the things that are right for the body, Rich King's the man to contact. Reach out to him at RK Athletics One, and he's got the plan that's best for you. But if you all feel your best, you can head on over to our good sponsors at Manscaped, and you can get 20% off your order at Manscaped when you use the promo code Love Wrestling, because that's what we do here on this channel. We love wrestling, Karl, and we also love music. The two of us do. We had a great first episode with the letter A here on Beats and Beatdowns. It's time for the letter B. I think we're going to have a great time here today. This guy has had a very major influence on professional wrestling and also on the world of music. We're talking about Billy Corgan. How could we not talk about Billy Corgan when it came to the letter B? I mean, this man embodies professional wrestling and rock and roll at the same time.
Not only starting promotions, working in promotions, but on that stage, rocking it out as only Billy Corgan can. Whether you like him, whether you hate him, his voice is a little bit different. His moves are a little bit different, but that's just what makes things so great.
Billy Corgan, I know, is a big fan of Canadian legendary band Rush, and Geddy Lee's voice also is a little bit different and stuff like that as well too. But again, one of the most brilliant bands of all time, and you can definitely tell some of the influences in the work that Billy's done over the years, whether it be with the Pumpkins, with Swan, his band that followed the Pumpkins, or even with his musical composing. He actually composed the film Ransom with Mel Gibson from back in the late 90s, or I believe around 97 or so, something like that. And a great job he did. He barely brought that whole rock musician can come in and compose movie music and make it memorable. And it really was a memorable piece of movie music on that movie. So, but let's take a little bit of dive into the history of Billy himself and how he got into music. Karl, I know you got some good facts for us. So I'm going to let you take this one.
Thanks. We're actually going to start. You mentioned music soundtracks. We're going to start with something a little bit odd in movies, as you had talked about originally. In the early 1990s, Billy Corgan actually made a short movie with his friends called Alien Half. In this flick, which was inspired by Ridley Scott's Alien, the boys are actually playing astronauts who travel to a distant planet only to be attacked by an alien, which was actually portrayed as a plush Tasmanian devil. They eventually go through the film and defeat this alien with a pink hairdryer gun. So it's interesting that even back then, okay, so Billy Corgan was born in 1967, and in the early 1980s, he's doing something having to do with film. So just amazing that he's continued that on pretty much throughout his entire career.
And imagine not having the digital advantages that we do today. I mean, you and I both, as people who have worked on video editing and stuff like that, have had the wonderful advantages of working with it in the digital technology age. The computers have made it easier over time for people to work with that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm sure there was probably a little bit of B-film cheese factor to this whole film. But at the same time, I'd imagine, again, coming down and having to do maybe the old-fashioned splicing of the actual film tape and stuff like that, or any of that sort of work that you'd have to be really old into the film industry to kind of understand and get and stuff like that. I'm sure he shot on 8mm even. I wonder if anyone out there understands 8mm that's tuning in today.
That's what I was just thinking that. I'm thinking, was it on 8mm? Was it maybe Betamax that they had used? Like,
it could be that too.
What was it that they used? I wasn't able to find out what they actually used to do the film, but what was it?
Who knows? But on the slim chance that Billy Corgan ever happens to have a moment to tune into this show, very slim chance, Billy, what did you use for the tape on this film, and how do you get a copy? Because we would love to have a chance to sit down and watch this thing. And, we would take a crack at reviewing it too after. We have some fun. But yeah, Billy Corgan, very interesting man, and we're going to get to the wrestling side of it. But man, a musical career that is phenomenal, and even going on into today. I mean, this man was huge during the 1990s. The Smashing Pumpkins hit after hit. Their earlier albums, there was a lot of musical change between them, but again, the definitive album had to have come about in about 1995, I believe, that the double album Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness come out. Not everybody's favorite album if they're a massive Pumpkins fan, because the ones that preceded it before tend to be a little bit more in the hearts of the big fans. But Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness was that big smash success, the one that won them 7 Grammys, the one that took them on the big headlining tours and the stuff that really opened the eyes to the world of the Smashing Pumpkins.
And it's absolutely amazing. I mean, music has been in this guy's blood since the very beginning. It seems like late in the in the 80s, he was actually writing musical pieces, opinion pieces for his high school newspaper, his high school paper that it puts out there. And I mean, even correctly predicting bands like U2, REM, and Metallica as becoming huge breakout acts. So really had a mind for the musical business, even at the young age of being in high school, and then continuing it on through, like you said. I mean, even like smash hits, amazing records, like just everything has been, just seems to be on point when it comes to anything that Billy Corgan really touches.
Yeah, and it was that Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness World Tour that actually I got to witness. That was my first ever real rock show. I had been to, a few various little concerts here and there growing up, local things, stuff like that. Never been to a real full-on rock show, and I was in the 8th grade at the time. The opportunity came about. Somebody had 3 tickets to the show. He said, do you want to go? I believe it was like $40 at the time to be able to go to this show. And I remember I did everything I could to save up that money and make sure I could go see this concert. And what an experience it was. I mean, this place was packed to the rafters. Again, Saskatoon rafters, people. It's not as big as it is in any other city, but still imagine, for me at the time, this was massive kind of thing. I mean, this got so crazy. At one point, I'm in the section just above the floor, about midway, and dude in the upper section of the building decides he's going to be drunk, high, whatever it was that night, decides to do a stage dive off of the railing of that section right onto the crowd below us, and he crowd surfed right down onto the floor. It was something else, Karl.
Oh my God. I can only envision that. I've been to different concerts where, crowd surfing has happened and, people have dropped from being, up that, but to go from there down to the floor, unreal.
Yeah, and the only other time I experienced the Pumpkins live was actually out at Outdoor Festival. They were on tour with the Somersault Festival right before they were having their initial split up as a group during the Immaculate of the Machines of God tour. And I remember for this one, I wanted to get up as close as I could, so I crushed my way up to the front of the area, about 2 rows back from the guardrail. And I didn't realize how packed this area had gotten. And all of a sudden, I am completely compressed in the sea of Smashing Pumpkins fans. And I ended up getting booted in the side of the head by one of the crowd surfers, got knocked out. Next thing you know, I'm waking up in a puddle of mud off to the side because it had been raining all day. I am covered in mud. This guy who pulled me out of there, he's like, dude, you're all right? I'm like, hell yeah, I'm all right. I just got knocked out at a Smashing Pumpkins concert, brother. Like, of course I'm all right.
Oh, geez. That's wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I can't top that. I cannot. I have not been knocked out at a concert. No.
I was a little more wild in my younger years, but
oh geez. Hey, nothing wrong with that though. I mean, live your life, people. If there's something you want to go and do, go and freaking do it, because you've only got this time to do it. Go and live that life.
And
And I know, Bobby, we've talked, and you definitely have lived your life. I have done the same. I've done so many different things in my life that I have no regrets over. And something like that, when you're at a concert like that, especially if you're younger and you're just starting to kind of get into these types of bands, and then you're at a live show from one of these bands that you've kind of been listening to that maybe got you into it a little bit, right? Like that's the top of the world for people right there.
Yeah, you bet. And yeah, and that first experience too, like, I mean, going to my first ever rock show and it being the Smashing Pumpkins, like, I know there was an opener and I don't remember who it was at this point in time, because it's not someone that ever manifested to anything afterwards. But man, the Pumpkins came out, they killed it. They played for nearly 2 hours. And I mean, this is a time when they had a lot less content, but I mean, they played a good portion of Melancholy and Infinite Sadness and the previous albums as well too, including Gish and Siamese Dream, which both fantastic albums and just an absolute exploration of great rock music. I had such a fun time. But enough about my concert experiences. I want to go back to you on some a little bit more facts about Billy. We're getting a little off track here.
No, that's definitely not off track at all, because I mean those are experiences that you have had with these actual artists, and I mean firsthand experiences. What better things to talk about than that? So speaking of firsthand experiences. So most people don't know this, but Billy Corgan actually has a red birthmark on his left hand. And in fact, he actually named one of his earlier bands, The Marked, because both he and the group's drummer had port wine stains on them. And if you don't know what port wine stain is, it's essentially just a red birthmark that is on you at birth. Lots of people, you see some people, for maybe a little bit of the older generation, even some of the younger generation going through history class, you would have heard like the name Mikhail Gorbachev. Mikhail Gorbachev has a port wine stain on his forehead. Yeah. Well, Billy Corgan had one on his left hand. And what better way to do something when it comes to building a brand for yourself than to use something like that and call yourselves The Marked? That's ingenious.
Yeah. And he's an ingenious guy when it comes to his branding. I believe that Billy does hold most of the rights, if not all the rights, to all his body of musical work. I know that I've heard various times from people who have worked with him, including, guys like Jim Cornette, who say he's just a brilliant businessman. He knows how to control his money. He knows how to control his properties. And that, we're going to get into that because that really ties into his impact in professional wrestling. So before we talk about the wrestling side, is there any more musical side you want to touch on before we go a little further?
Well, I think the only other thing that I want to touch on, and something that's actually a little bit funny, that really didn't have a damaging effect to the career of the Smashing Pumpkins, but they were playing in the Reading Festival in 1992, and Billy Corgan got so frustrated over the sound quality and other issues that were happening during this show that he actually broke his guitar and threw it into the crowd. Now, here's where the damaging part comes in. As luck would have it, the guitar actually hit the band's record company's president in the head. So, yeah, maybe Billy after that kind of took a little step back and was like, maybe I need to control my anger a little bit here, because this could have gone south real badly. Fortunately, everything from what I've been able to see was all forgiven. And it was like, yeah, I understand how you would be frustrated. Don't do that crap again. Okay.
So what you're saying is the whole NWA locker room should watch out if Billy comes out wielding a guitar to that ring.
You thought you had to be afraid of Jeff Jarrett? No, be afraid of Billy Corgan.
That's the only time you should be afraid of Billy, because other than that, he seems like a very intelligent, great human being, and has done a lot of wonders, not only for music, but professional wrestling as well, too. his influence on pro wrestling started with a company that he started, Resistance Pro Wrestling, in 2011, Karl, and we were talking before. He did that for a few years until about 2014.
Yeah.
He moved on there to Total Nonstop Action. And again, I didn't write down the very long title that they gave him, so I'm going to turn over to you for filling us in on that portion of it.
Yeah, April 2015, he was announced as the new senior producer of creative and talent development for TNA, for Total Nonstop Action.
Yeah. And I believe the reason for departing eventually became a dispute over money and stuff too. I believe that he had given an influx of money to the owners of TNA. I believe that from stories I've heard, and again, I don't want to say that I can collaborate these stories. I don't know the people behind them. So anytime I say what I'm saying, it's because I've heard that. Take it with a grain of salt. Stories can be twisted around in the world of professional wrestling. We know this. But from my understanding is Billy was to believe he was purchasing TNA wrestling. He thought that he was going to be the new takeover of TNA wrestling at the time, and that he was going to get all the properties and everything from Dixie Carter, and it never ended up being that case. And that's when the lawsuit went down against, I believe it was Anthem Sports, if I'm not mistaken, that owned it at the time that the lawsuit was taking place. Yes. So like, it was very unfortunate time. I mean, I thought Billy was a great addition to the TNA roster and doing the things that he was doing over there. I thought the influx of money was something they could really use at that time, when I thought that, they still had a lot of places they could go. And it was very unfortunate that before what we know of Impact today, that TNA wrestling really was, doing such great work there for quite some time. And I believe just had a lot more to give.
They definitely did have a lot more to give. And in regards to the lawsuit issues and stuff, all of that really came to a head in 2016, in August of 2016, where he became the promotion's president. And it was at that time that he figured himself that and I've heard the same story. That's why I say this. He figured as well that he was actually purchasing the rights to the company, being made the president of the company, putting in all of this money. But then things broke down and eventually left in November of 2016. So, I mean, a mere 3 months of who knows what was going on. But ultimately, in the end, Billy didn't get what he thought he was getting, and ultimately just left the company.
He did. But I mean, he'd be laughing last, I believe, in the whole thing. I believe that there was a settlement made and that he would recover some of the money, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if he got all of it back or some of it back, but he did manage to win his side of it. And then he would move on to do something huge that nobody expected to have happen, and that was the purchase of the National Wrestling Alliance. And this came with a lot of the namesakes, the championship belt, Sweet Charlotte, the 16 pounds of gold, anybody that was involved with the company at the time. And he began to change it and bring it back. He remembered what it was to him. I loved watching the docuseries that he put out on YouTube about the 16 pounds of gold and everything like that. Such a beautifully well done thing. And then he would come up with matches every once in a while that teased you to the recovery of the NWA. And then suddenly, boom, NWA Power hits YouTube, and it has this retroactive feeling like the NWA of old. And man, it came on at 6:05, just like NWA did back in the territory days. This was so beautifully done, and such a homage to what pro wrestling used to be, for being shot in a studio the way that they were doing Power initially. This was awesome. I loved it, and Billy becoming the president of it, I've continued to follow it as well too. I think that there's a lot of good. There is some things that get a little muddled over in NWA, and I'm sure our very own Zach could tell you all about that, along with Ella, when they do Power Out each and every week. And I know that there's a bit of a cluster over there in NWA, but when they get it right, they really do get it right. And that's because Billy has such a love for what he's doing there at NWA.
I think you hit it right on the head there. Billy Corgan has a love for professional wrestling. So, I mean, not only is he just a fan, but he's a businessman as well, like we've discussed. So 100% he gets it. He understands and he knows, and especially creating Resistance Pro and then doing everything that he did with TNA. from 2015 to 2016. So 2011 with Resistance Pro starting to 2016, leaving TNA, 2017 purchasing NWA with everything, trademarks, championships, everything. The guy really knows what he's doing in a business sense, even though maybe he's gone through a number of different companies. But I'm sure through every single step of the way, he has really built and grown and learned. And I think we definitely do see that in what the NWA is today. As you said, taking it back to those territory days, I love that. And I mean, it's not necessarily that it's even territory that's happening with it, but just that look and that feel of it, and actually being in that studio audience setting. It's like if you were to go to a television show, if you were to go to a television taping, like let's say The Big Bang Theory. I use that as the big one because they did a lot of behind the scenes stuff where you actually see the stage that's set up, and then you see the audience that's sitting, in front of them. That's exactly what the NWA is right now. It's all one stage. That's it. And I love the look of that.
I do, and it really breaks it up from the typical look that we get from a lot of professional wrestling companies these days, because there is a certain standard that they try to follow, so it's recognizable and stuff like that. But what Billy did is he tapped into that niche market of fans that really want not only something a little bit different, but also ones that want to feel like it's going back to what they grew up on and stuff like that. And that's what he gave back to the pro wrestling fans. And yeah, you couldn't say it better myself there. So, and one other smart business move I'm going to mention is that Into the Fire was the original theme song used on NWA Power, but that did change. And people have sometimes asked what it is, because maybe people aren't quite as into the Pumpkins as what I've been all these years. But actually the song that they changed it to is a Smashing Pumpkins song from 2021 called Sear. There was an album of the same name that came out, and that was the lead track off of the album, and that is what ended up being the theme song to NWA Power. So again, Billy doesn't have to pay royalties to anyone to have the music, because he owns that property right there.
Yeah. Smart, very smart.
Before we move on to the last little segment where we talk about some of our favorites from Mr. Billy Corgan, is there anything else we didn't touch on, Karl, that you want to talk about?
I don't think so. I think we actually touched on everything. I mean, business-wise, the guy's really done everything that you can think of. And it's fantastic to be able to see, especially somebody that we've listened to growing up, and maybe a band that has been very influential on a lot of people, to really know and find out that, because up until about maybe 2 years ago, I had no clue that Billy Corgan had helped create Resistance Pro. So to be able to find these things out, and to know that somebody that I've seen on screen in music videos and listen to their music is actually a professional wrestling fan as well, which is something that's hard to find, right? So just to know that, and to know that he's been able to take his business sense from young days all the way through and incorporate into pro wrestling, absolutely fantastic.
Couldn't agree with you more. Now we always like to end things off talking about some of our favorite things from the artist that we're talking about. And I'll start off by saying there's a couple ways I can go. Being such a big fan, I could go on forever about certain things that I love from the Smashing Pumpkins. I could touch on Swan and how that album was actually technically way better than some people ever give it credit for, and should go back and listen to it. It's the first non-Pumpkins album that he did after the Pumpkins for a while there. So go check that out. Favorite overall song for me, Siva from the Gish album. I really love that piece of work. I think it's a brilliant piece of work, and I'm always going to have a fond place for it. And also, surprisingly, the Adore album, which took a lot of fans out of things after Melancholy, I thought was such a great piece of musical artistry that took the band in a completely different direction. And it showed that they weren't afraid to say, hey, we're going to do what we want to do. We're going to experiment the way we want to experiment. I've heard Corgan say in many interviews, if I do the same thing over and over again, I'm not challenging myself as an artist. And I just want people to take that moment to go back and maybe appreciate some of the work that was on Adore, because it deserves a re-listen that maybe some people haven't given it in such a long time. So that's my speech when it comes to what I like from here. But I'm going to turn it over to you, Karl. What do you like from Billy?
Yeah, as you guys heard in the first episode, I've chosen one particular song, and it's something that's a little bit obscure, but yet still can be found. So this is actually coming from a time when he was in the band The Marked.
Nice.
And it's called Murder Mix is the song. Now, there really wasn't an actual album that was done, but how you can find it is you can search up Murder Mix and then August 1986 demo tape side B song 7. That's a damn mouthful, but The Marked Murder Mix August 1986 demo tape side B song 7. Just I want to find something obscure that people probably have never heard of before. And I want you all to go and check that out. Check out any of the songs that both Bobby and I have talked about. And then send us a message and let us know what you guys thought of those particular songs.
And at the same time, feel free to reach out and tell us what's your favorite song, or maybe there's something that we might find as a deep dive that we forgot about or something like that. I know Billy's got such a wide variety of stuff he's put out there, even doing some solo work as of late too. So there's a lot out there. So send it our way. We love music. So send us lots and lots of music because we're ready to listen. So
where can they find you, Bobby?
Where can they find me? Well, as always, they can find me here on multiple shows on Love Wrestling, of course, here with you on Beats and Beatdowns, Sunday Brunch as well. And you know what? I'm on the socials. Check it out. Bobby Munson. You'll find me on there. Say hello. I'm friendly. I don't bite too hard.
And that's how you're going to be able to send him all of that information that he's just asked for. Because, yeah, Bobby and I both love music. Not just love wrestling, but we love music and all kinds of music as well. So find Bobby on the socials. And the easiest way for me is to go to Twitter and look up K Karufel, Karufel. That's how you're going to find me. Follow me and let's interact.
Let's do it. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.